Ambassador Vance had never felt so small in her entire life. She stood in the center of the Galactic Council chamber, a massive room made of crystal that seemed to stretch forever in every direction. 12 different alien species sat in their floating platforms above her, looking down at her like she was an insect that had crawled into their home. The High Speaker floated at the highest point. His body was made of shifting light, changing colors as he spoke. Right now, that light was a cold, harsh blue. Had learned that blue meant contempt. She had seen a lot of blue since arriving. The council recognizes the human representative, the High Speaker announced. His voice echoed through the chamber like thunder. You may stand while we deliver our judgment. Kept her face calm, but inside her heart was pounding. She had spent 3 years trying to earn humanity a place among the stars. 3 years of meetings, of proposals, of begging for the chance to prove that humans deserved to be part of galactic civilization. Now she was about to find out if any of it had mattered. We have studied your species carefully, the High Speaker continued. We have examined your history, your culture, your nature. He paused, and his light shifted to an even darker shade of blue. What we found was deeply disturbing. A massive holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber. Stomach dropped as she realized what they were showing. Images of human history played across the screen. Wars, destruction, violence. They showed every terrible thing humanity had ever done to itself. Your species has been at war for 93% of its recorded history, the High Speaker said. You developed weapons capable of destroying your own planet before you learned to feed all your people. You hunted other species to extinction for sport. You even consumed the flesh of other beings. Laughter rippled through the chamber, heard clicking sounds from the insect-like. The Moors made wet bubbling noises that she knew was their version of mockery. Even the usually silent flashed their bioluminescent skin in patterns of amusement. They were laughing at her, at all of humanity. Perhaps most disturbing, the High Speaker continued, is that you achieved faster-than-light travel while still divided into warring tribes. You call them nations. You fought each other even as you reached for the stars. This is unprecedented in galactic history. Every other species unified before leaving their home world. You did not. Wanted to speak. She wanted to explain that yes, humanity had a violent past, but they had also grown. They had learned. They had built beautiful things and saved each other from disasters and shown kindness to strangers. But she knew the rules. She was not allowed to speak until given permission. The High Speaker's light turned almost black. The Council has deliberated for 3 cycles. We have reached a unanimous decision. Held her breath. Humanity is hereby classified as a barbaric species, grade 7. This is the lowest classification possible for a spacefaring civilization. The words hit like a physical blow. She had expected resistance. She had expected conditions and requirements. She had not expected this. Under this classification, the High Speaker continued, humanity is confined to its home system. You may not travel beyond your sun's influence. You may not engage in trade with Council species. You may not form alliances or partnerships. You may not attend Council sessions or communicate with member species. His hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against her sides so no one would see. You are, in essence, quarantined. The galaxy will not risk contamination from your violent nature. Perhaps in 1,000 years we will reconsider. Perhaps by then you will have evolved beyond your barbaric instincts. More laughter, louder this time. The representative was making a gesture that recognized as particularly insulting. The delegates were poolsing with bright, mocking colors. The human representative may now speak, the High Speaker said, though we expect nothing she says will change our decision. Looked around the chamber. Every alien face, every alien body, every alien light pattern showed the same thing: contempt, disgust. They had already decided what humans were. Nothing she said would matter to them. But it would matter to the humans watching this broadcast back home. It would matter to the billions of people who had hoped and dreamed of joining the galactic community. She had to say something. She took a deep breath and spoke clearly. I will not beg. I will not apologize for what humanity is. Yes, we have a violent history. Yes, we have done terrible things to each other and to our world. We do not deny this. The laughter faded slightly. They had expected her to grovel. But you have only looked at part of our story, continued. You have not seen the other side. You have not seen how we survived ice ages that should have killed us, how we built civilizations from nothing, how we looked up at the stars and refused to believe they were beyond our reach. The high speaker's light flickered with annoyance. These accomplishments do not excuse your nature. Our nature, said, is not just violence. It is also love. It is sacrifice. It is the mother who dies protecting her children. It is the stranger who runs into a burning building to save someone they have never met. It is the soldier who throws himself on an explosive to save his friends. Silence fell over the chamber, took another breath. You judge us by our worst moments, but those moments taught us lessons that you have never had to learn. We know the cost of war because we have paid it in blood. We know the value of peace because we have fought so hard to find it. Enough, the high speaker said. Your words change nothing. The decision stands. Nodded slowly. Guards were already approaching to escort her out. As she turned to leave, she paused at the doorway and looked back at the assembled representatives. These beings who had ruled the stars for thousands of years. These beings who had never known struggle, never faced extinction, never had to claw their way up from nothing. You have made your judgment, she said quietly. You have looked at humanity and seen only barbarians. I hope you never need to understand why you are wrong. I hope you never face a darkness so deep that you need the very things you despise about us. She held the high speaker's gaze for a long moment. But if that day ever comes, remember this moment. Remember how you laughed at us. And then ask yourselves whether the barbarians might have been right all along. The chamber was completely silent as she walked out. Her footsteps echoed in the crystal halls, each one carrying her further from everything she had worked for. Behind her, the council representatives stared at the empty space where she had stood. The high speaker's light flickered once, twice. Then he turned away and called for the next matter of business. The humans had been dealt with. They would never be a concern again. Or so the council believed. 18 months passed after the council's judgment. Back on Earth, humanity did not fall apart as many aliens had expected. They did not start wars with each other out of frustration. They did not give up and fade into silence. Instead, they got to work. The United Terran Assembly formed within 3 months of return. Old enemies became allies. Nations that had argued for centuries found common ground. If the galaxy did not want them, humanity decided, then humanity would become strong enough that the galaxy could not ignore them. Shipyards that had been building exploration vessels began producing warships. Factories that had made consumer goods started manufacturing weapons. Scientists who had studied alien technology turned their attention to improving human designs. Every person on Earth understood the same truth. They were alone in a hostile universe, and they needed to be ready for whatever came next. Vance watched all of this from her office on Luna Station. She had become something of a symbol after her speech at the council. People looked to her for guidance, for hope. She did her best to provide both, even when she felt neither. Late one night, she was reviewing military reports when her communications officer burst through the door. "Ambassador, you need to see this." The young man's face was pale. His hands were shaking as he activated the holographic display. Stood up slowly, a cold feeling spreading through her chest. "What is it?" "The border worlds, they have gone dark." Stared at the display. 12 colony worlds that had been bustling with millions of aliens just hours ago now showed nothing. No signals, No life signs, no movement of any kind. What happened to them? The officer swallowed hard. We intercepted a distress signal before the last world went silent. I think you need to hear it yourself. He played the recording. The voice that came through was high and filled with terror. They came from the void. They are harvesting us, taking our bodies, processing our flesh. We cannot fight them. We cannot run. They are everywhere. Please, someone help us, please. The signal cut off with a horrible wet sound that knew she would hear in her nightmares for years to come. What are they? She whispered. Unknown, but whatever they are moving fast, really fast. Over the following weeks, the galaxy learned the name of the enemy, the Harvesters, a species so old that no records of their origin existed. They had appeared from the dark spaces between stars, and they had come to feed. The Harvesters did not want territory. They did not want resources. They did not want slaves. They wanted biomass. Every living thing they encountered was broken down into organic slurry and consumed. Entire planets were stripped of life in days. Billions of beings were processed like meat in a factory. The Galactic Council convened emergency sessions every day. Their panic was visible even through official communications. The mighty, who had led the council for 10,000 years, were watching their empire disappear system by system. High Speaker ordered the war fleet to engage the enemy. There were the warriors of the council, an insect-like species that had never lost a major battle in their entire history. Their fleet was the largest and most advanced in known space. 14,000 warships, crewed by soldiers who had trained their entire lives for combat. They met the Harvester Vanguard at the nebula. The battle was broadcast across the galaxy. Every species watched, hoping to see their champions turn back the tide of death. The battle lasted 6 hours. At the end, not a single ship remained. 14,000 vessels, millions of warriors, the pride of galactic civilization, all reduced to drifting wreckage and harvested flesh. The last transmission from the Admiral was just 2 words, spoken in a voice empty of hope. Forgive us. Panic spread across the council like wildfire. The Moors proposed immediate surrender, hoping the Harvesters would spare those who submitted willingly. They began evacuation protocols, loading their people onto generation ships aimed at distant galaxies. They argued and debated and achieved nothing while their worlds burned. Watched all of this from Luna Station. Part of her felt grim satisfaction. These were the beings who had mocked humanity, who had called them barbarians, who had laughed at their history of violence. Now those same beings were screaming for help, and no one could save them. But another part of her felt only sorrow. She thought about the children on those colony worlds, the families torn apart, the lives ended in terror and pain. They had done nothing wrong. They did not deserve what was happening to them. At the council, a junior diplomat named Elle stood up during a session. She was young for her light pattern still bright and strong. The older representatives ignored her until she spoke loudly enough to be heard over the chaos. What about the humans? Silence fell over the chamber. Every representative turned to stare at her. What did you say? High Speaker demanded. Elle stood her ground, though her light flickered with nervousness. The humans, they are a warrior species. Their entire history is combat and survival. They have been building military forces for the past 18 months. Perhaps they could help us. The High Speaker's light turned dark with anger. They are barbarians. They hate us for what we did to them. They would never help us. With respect, High Speaker, we are out of options. They are destroyed. Our own fleets are no match for the enemy. If we do not find help somewhere, we will all be harvested. An older representative spoke up. Even if we asked why would they come, we humiliated them. We called them animals. We quarantined them in their own system like diseased creatures. Elle's light pulsed with something like hope. Because they are not like us. They are emotional, irrational. They do things that make no logical sense. She paused. They help those who have hurt them. Their history is full of such stories. Perhaps that irrationality is exactly what we need. The chamber erupted in argument. Some called the idea madness. Others saw no alternative. High Speaker listened to it all, his light shifting through colors that no one could read. Finally, he raised his hand for silence. We will send a message to the humans. We will ask for their help. His voice was heavy with something that might have been shame. We will offer to reconsider all previous sanctions. He paused, and when he spoke again, his light had dimmed to almost nothing. May the universe forgive us for what we must do, and may the humans be the irrational barbarians we accuse them of being. Because if they are not, if they are as logical and cold as we are, then they will leave us to die. He looked around the chamber at his fellow representatives, these beings who had ruled the galaxy for so long. And we will deserve it. The message was sent that night. Across the cold void of space, it traveled to the small blue world called Earth, to the barbarians who had been judged unworthy of the stars. The galaxy held its breath and waited. Vance read the council's message 3 times. Each time she felt a different emotion. First came disbelief, then came a dark, bitter amusement. Finally came something she had not expected at all: pity. The message was short and formal, but she could read the desperation between every line. The mighty Galactic Council, rulers of 1,000 worlds, was begging for help from the barbarians they had cast out. She forwarded the message to the United Terran Assembly with a single note attached: "We need to talk about this, now." Within hours, every representative had gathered in the assembly hall. The room was filled with tension as played the council's message for everyone to hear. When it finished, silence hung in the air like a storm waiting to break. Then the storm broke. "Let them burn," shouted representative from the Asian coalition. "They laughed at us. They called us animals. Now they want our help. Tell them to save themselves." "I agree," said representative from the African Union. "We owe them nothing, less than nothing. They tried to destroy our future." More voices joined in. Anger that had been building for 18 months poured out in waves. These were proud people who had been humiliated on a galactic stage. The wound was still fresh, and the council's message had torn it open again. Let them speak. She understood their anger because she felt it too, but she also knew that anger alone could not guide this decision. After an hour of debate, she raised her hand for silence. "I have heard your words," she said. "I share your pain. What the council did to us was wrong. They judged us without understanding us. They dismissed our entire species based on the worst parts of our history." "Exactly," someone shouted. "So why should we help them?" Took a deep breath, "Because we are not them." The room fell quiet. Continued her voice steady and clear. "I have been watching the reports from the front lines. The harvesters do not care about politics. They do not care about old grudges. They simply consume. In the past month alone, 17 billion beings have died. 17 billion. Most of them were innocent people who had nothing to do with the council's decision about humanity." She pulled up images on the holographic display. Refugee ships fleeing destroyed worlds. Children being loaded onto evacuation transports. The aftermath of harvester attacks, entire planets reduced to barren rock. These are the people who will die if we do nothing, not the council members who insulted us, not the politicians who voted against us. Ordinary people, families, children who never got the chance to decide what they thought about humans. Representative from Japan spoke up. "But if we help them, we reward their behavior. We show them that they can treat others badly and still expect rescue." "Or," replied, "we show them what humanity really is. We show them that we are better than their worst assumptions about us. We prove that the barbarians they feared are actually the ones willing to sacrifice for strangers." The debate continued, growing more thoughtful as the hours passed. Some representatives remained firm in their refusal. Others began to waver as they considered words. Then Admiral James stood up. He was an older man, his dark skin marked with scars from a lifetime of military service. He had commanded Earth's defensive fleet for 15 years and was respected by everyone in the room. When he spoke, people listened. "I am a soldier," he said quietly. "I have spent my life training to fight, to protect. When the Council cast us out, I was angry. I wanted them to suffer for what they did. Part of me still does." He paused, looking around the room with eyes that had seen too much. "But I have also read the casualty reports. I have studied what the harvesters do to the people they catch. It is not quick. It is not clean. They die screaming while their bodies are broken down for food." His voice hardened. "No one deserves that, not even people who hurt us. We did not crawl out of the mud and survive ice ages and plagues and nuclear weapons just to become cold, just to become what they accused us of being." He turned to face the full assembly. "I say we help them, not for the Council, not for politics, but because it is right, because that is what humans do. We help, even when it costs us, especially when it costs us." The vote was called immediately afterward. The room held its breath as representatives entered their decisions. The result was close, closer than had hoped, but in the end the motion passed by a single vote. Humanity would answer the call. Returned to the council chamber 1 week later. The room that had once echoed with laughter and contempt was now silent with fear. The representatives who had mocked her now looked at her with desperate hope. High Speaker approached her directly. His light was dim, almost gray. "You came," he said, and there was wonder in his voice. "We came," confirmed. "Why, after everything we did to you, after how we treated your kind, why would you help us?" Looked at him for a long moment. "Because we know what it is like to face extinction alone. We remember every time our species nearly ended. We remember the fear and the desperation and the prayers for someone, anyone, to help us." She stepped closer to him. "We also remember what it cost us to learn compassion. How many wars we fought before we understood that enemies could become friends. How many people died before we realized that revenge only creates more pain. You called us barbarians because we know how to fight," she continued. "But you missed the other half of what makes us human. We also know how to forgive, how to reach out to those who hurt us, how to choose hope over hatred." The High Speaker's light flickered with an emotion could not identify. "We do not deserve this." "No," agreed. "You do not, but deserve has nothing to do with it. We are not helping you because you earned it. We are helping you because it is who we choose to be." She turned to address the full council. Behind her, a holographic display showed the Terran fleet preparing for departure. 700 warships, crewed by men and women who had volunteered knowing they might not return. "Tell us where the enemy is. Give us the coordinates of the Harvester fleet, and then stay out of our way." The High Speaker provided the information immediately. As reviewed the data, she felt the weight of what was about to happen. Thousands of humans were about to fly into a battle against an enemy that had destroyed the greatest military force in the galaxy. Many of them would die. She knew this. They knew this. They were going anyway. "One more thing," she said before leaving. "When this is over, whatever happens, you will look at humanity again, and this time you will see us clearly. You will understand what you missed the first time." She walked out of the chamber without looking back. There was work to do. The barbarians were going to war. The Terran fleet emerged from fold space like wolves bursting from the shadows. 700 warships materialized at the threshold, the last defensive line before the Council's core worlds. Ahead of them, blocking the path to safety for billions of refugees, waited the Harvester Armada. Council observers aboard distant monitoring stations watched the human fleet arrive. What they saw made them gasp in shock. They had expected human ships to look like Council vessels, elegant, graceful, designed as much for beauty as function. Instead, the Terran warships were ugly, angular blocks of metal covered in armor plating and bristling with weapons. No smooth curves, no artistic flourishes, just brutal, functional machines built for one purpose only: killing. Admiral James stood on the bridge of his flagship, the TNS Perseverance. Around him, his crew worked in focused silence. They had trained for this moment for 18 months. Now it was finally here. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we are receiving a transmission from the Harvester fleet." "Put it through." The voice that filled the bridge was not really a voice at all. It was a collection of sounds, millions of stolen voices speaking as one. Every species the Harvesters had consumed contributed to their communication. "Submit," the Harvesters broadcast. "Become harvest. Resistance is biological inefficiency. Your biomass will join the collective. Submit and the processing will be quick." Listen to the message with a calm expression. When it finished, he opened a channel to respond. His voice was steady and clear. "This is Admiral James of the Terran Defense Fleet. We are humanity. We have received your terms and considered them carefully." He paused, and a small smile crossed his weathered face. "Here is our answer. We do not submit. We do not surrender. We do not negotiate. We have been waiting our entire existence for something worth fighting. You are not worthy, but you will do." He cut the channel and turned to his tactical officer. "All ships, attack pattern Omega. Show them what barbarians can do." The Terran fleet surged forward. Council observers watched in stunned amazement as human ships did things that should have been impossible. While Council military doctrine emphasized keeping distance and firing from safety, human pilots flew directly into enemy formations. They dodged between Harvester vessels, firing at point-blank range where their weapons could do maximum damage. Captain Sarah of the TNS Fury led her squadron into the heart of the Harvester swarm. Her ship shook as enemy fire struck her hull, but she kept pushing forward. When her main weapons were destroyed, she rammed her vessel into the side of a Harvester carrier and detonated her antimatter core. The explosion took out 3 enemy ships along with hers. All across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Human ships that lost engines continued fighting until they were completely destroyed. Pilots whose vessels were crippled used their final moments to crash into enemy targets. Marines in combat suits launched from airlocks and boarded Harvester ships, fighting hand-to-hand in corridors that had never been designed for such madness. The Harvesters had conquered hundreds of species across thousands of years. They had developed perfect strategies for dealing with every type of resistance. They understood how civilized beings fought. They knew how to break them. But they had never encountered humans. Anomalous behavior DETCTED, the Harvester Collective broadcast to itself. Enemy UNITS engaging in suicide TACTICS. Enemy UNITS fighting beyond sustainable damage levels. Enemy UNITS DISPLAYING irrational aggression. RECALCULATING threat assessment. The battle raged for hours. The Harvesters had numbers and technology on their side. The humans had something the Harvesters could not understand or counter. They had the willingness to die. On the Perseverance, Admiral directed the battle with calm precision. His ship had taken heavy damage, but it was still fighting. All around him, he watched his people give everything they had. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, "the flagship Indomitable has lost all engines. Captain is requesting orders." Looked at the tactical display. The Indomitable was drifting helplessly near the Harvester command nexus. The massive structure was the brain of the enemy fleet. If it could be destroyed, the Harvesters would be thrown into chaos. He opened a channel to the Indomitable. Captain appeared on screen, blood running down her face from a head wound. Behind her, her bridge was on fire. "Can you still maneuver?" "Barely, sir. Attitude thrusters only. We are dead in space." looked at the command nexus on his display, then back at. She understood immediately what he was thinking. "Sir, we are at half the speed of light," she said. "If we redirect all remaining power to the thrusters, we can reach the nexus in 4 minutes. Your crew will not survive the impact." Smiled though there were tears in her eyes. "We know, sir. We already voted on it. Unanimous decision." Felt his throat tighten. "Sarah, thank you." "It has been an honor, Admiral. Tell Earth we did our duty." The channel closed. On the tactical display, the Indomitable began to turn. Slowly at first, then faster as every remaining system was pushed to maximum power. The crippled ship aimed itself at the Harvester command nexus like a bullet. The Harvesters saw it coming. They tried to stop it. Hundreds of weapons fired at the dying ship. Pieces of hull were torn away. Entire sections of the vessel were destroyed. But the Indomitable kept coming. 4 minutes later, a ship carrying 2,000 human souls crashed into the Harvester command nexus at half the speed of light. The explosion lit up the darkness of space like a new star being born. The command nexus was completely destroyed. Without it, the Harvester fleet fell into confusion. Ships that had been working in perfect coordination began making mistakes. Their movements became disorganized. Their attacks lost precision. The human fleet pressed the advantage immediately. Fresh squadrons that had been held in reserve now joined the battle. Damaged ships that had withdrawn for repairs returned to the fight. For the next 8 hours, the Terran fleet tore into the confused enemy with relentless fury. When it was finally over, the Harvester armada had been broken. The survivors fled into dark space, broadcasting a new message to their distant kindred. "Avoid, avoid. DATHWORLD species identified. Designation, human. Species FIGHTS without fear of death. Species ACCEPTS destruction of individual UNITS for collective victory. Threat level, maximum. Avoid human space. Avoid." Admiral stood on the bridge of the Perseverance and surveyed the aftermath. Of his 700 ships, only 219 remained. Hundreds of thousands of humans had given their lives in this battle. But they had won. His communications officer approached him slowly. "Sir, the Council observers are requesting to speak with you. They are asking how we did this, how we beat an enemy that destroyed the—" Was silent for a long moment. His eyes were wet, but his voice was steady when he spoke. "Tell them the truth. Tell them we won because we are not afraid to die for each other. Tell them that every person in this fleet knew they might not go home, and they came anyway. Tell them that humans do not fight for glory or conquest or survival alone." He looked out at the wreckage of battle, at the drifting remains of ships crewed by heroes. "We fight for each other, for our families, for the people standing beside us, and we will never ever stop." He straightened his uniform and took a deep breath. "Send word to the Council. Tell them the wolves have finished hunting. The path to their core worlds is clear." He paused, and his voice dropped to barely a whisper. "Tell them to remember our dead. We certainly will." 3 weeks after the Battle of Threshold, Ambassador Vance walked into the Galactic Council chamber for the 3rd time in her life. The crystal walls still stretched toward infinity. The floating platform still held representatives from across the galaxy, but everything else had changed. The first time she had come here, the chamber had echoed with laughter and contempt. The second time, it had been filled with fear and desperation. Now, as she walked to the center of the room, there was only silence. A heavy, thoughtful silence that seemed to press against her skin. She was not alone this time. Behind her came Admiral, still wearing his battle-worn uniform. His eyes carried the weight of everyone he had lost. Beside him walked Captain, whose ship had been the first to breach the Harvester defensive line, and Doctor, who had led the medical teams that treated wounded aliens alongside wounded humans. They stood together in the center of the chamber, while holographic displays showed images from the aftermath of the battle. But these were not images of destruction. They showed human rescue ships pulling survivors from damaged Council vessels, Terran medics treating species that had called them animals, engineers sharing technology and expertise with beings who had them the stars. High Speaker descended from his platform to stand directly before. His light was different now, softer, uncertain in a way she had never seen before. "Ambassador Vance," he said, and his voice was quiet, "we asked you here today to. He stopped. For a long moment, the ancient being who had led the Galactic Council for centuries seemed lost for words. "We do not know how to say what needs to be said," he finally admitted. "We have ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. We have made countless decisions, but we have never had to do what we must do now." He paused, and when he continued, his voice was heavy with something recognized as shame. "We were wrong about your kind, completely, terribly wrong. We looked at your history and saw only violence. We judged you by your worst moments and ignored everything else. We were arrogant. We were cruel. We were." "Afraid," said softly. The High Speaker's light flickered. "Yes, we were afraid. Your species frightened us in ways we did not want to admit. You were so different from every other civilization we had encountered. So chaotic, so unpredictable. We could not understand you, so we decided you must be dangerous." He looked around at the other council representatives. Many of them could not meet his gaze. "When the harvesters came, we learned the price of our arrogance. Our greatest fleet was destroyed in hours. Our most advanced civilizations crumbled. We had spent thousands of years believing we were the masters of the galaxy, and we could not save ourselves." His light shifted to a warmer color as he turned back to, "Then you came, the barbarians we had cast out, the violent primitives we had quarantined. You came to save beings who had done nothing but hurt you." Admiral stepped forward. His voice was rough with exhaustion and grief. "We did not do it for you. We did it because innocent people were dying, children, families, people who had never done anything to us." "We know," the High Speaker said. "We watched everything. We saw your ships flying into certain death to protect strangers. We saw your soldiers fighting hand-to-hand against monsters to save people they had never met. We saw your medics treating our wounded while your own people were still bleeding." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice cracked with emotion. "We saw the indomitable. We saw 2,000 humans vote to die so that we might live. We do not have words in any of our languages for what that means to us." Felt tears forming in her eyes, but she kept her composure. "What do you want from us now?" The High Speaker straightened, and his light began to pulse with formal colors. "The Council has deliberated. For the first time in our history, our decision was unanimous." He raised his hand, and every representative in the chamber rose to their feet, or their equivalent of feet. Even the ones who had laughed loudest 18 months ago now stood in respect. "Humanity is hereby reclassified," the High Speaker announced. "All previous designations are removed, all sanctions are lifted, all restrictions are void." He looked directly at, "But more than that, much more. The Galactic Council formally invites humanity to take its place among the stars, not as observers, not as junior members, not as probationary species under supervision." His light blazed with colors had never seen before. "We invite you to join us as equals, as partners, as the species that showed us what courage truly means." The chamber erupted in sound. Every representative in their own way expressed agreement, clicking mandibles, bioluminescent pulses, humming frequencies, a chorus of alien voices united in a single message. "Welcome," stood in the center of it all, feeling the weight of the moment. She thought about everyone who had worked and hoped and dreamed for this day. She thought about the soldiers who had died to make it possible. She thought about all the times humanity had been told they were not good enough, not civilized enough, not worthy enough. "Before I accept," she said, and her voice carried across the chamber. "I need you to understand something." The noise faded. Every alien turned to listen. "We did not do this to prove ourselves to you. We did not fight and die so that you would respect us. We did it because it was right. Because helping others, even when it costs us, is who we choose to be." She looked around at the assembled representatives. "We are loud. We are emotional. We fight among ourselves and make terrible mistakes. We carry our scars openly because they remind us of what we survived and what we learned. You called that barbarism. We call it being human." Admiral stepped up beside her. "We lost almost half our fleet at. Hundreds of thousands of our people will never go home. Their families will grieve forever." His voice hardened. "Do not ever forget what they gave for you. Do not ever think we did this because we wanted your approval." Doctor spoke next. "When we treated your wounded, some of them were afraid of us. They had been taught that humans were dangerous, that we might hurt them." She shook her head slowly. "We proved them wrong, one patient at a time. That is how you change minds, not with speeches, with actions." Turned back to the High Speaker. "If we join this council, we will not become like you. We will not stop being emotional. We will not apologize for our nature. We will be human, with all that means." The High Speaker's light pulsed with something like a smile. "We would not want anything else. We have spent 10,000 years surrounded by species that think like we do. Perhaps it is time we learned from those who think differently." He extended something that might have been a hand. "Welcome to the Galactic Council, Ambassador Vance. Welcome to the stars." Reached out and took it. Behind her, through the massive viewport, the battered remains of the Terran fleet held formation. Damaged, but unbroken. In the weeks that followed, things began to change across the galaxy. Human ships joined Council patrols. Human engineers helped rebuild destroyed colonies. Human medics trained alien doctors in techniques they had developed from centuries of treating their own wounded. And everywhere they went, the humans told stories. Stories of Earth's history, both the terrible parts and the beautiful parts. Stories of heroes who had sacrificed everything for strangers. Stories of enemies who became friends, of hatred that transformed into love, of people who had every reason to give up but kept fighting anyway. The galaxy learned that they had been wrong about humanity, not because humans had stopped being violent or emotional or chaotic, but because those traits were not the whole story. They were just the parts that scared species who had never had to struggle. The truth was simpler and more complicated at the same time. Humans were survivors. They had faced extinction countless times and refused to die. They had looked into the darkness and found light. They had learned, through of pain and growth, that the only way forward was together. At the memorial ceremony for the fallen, Admiral gave a speech that would be remembered for generations. "They called us barbarians because we knew how to fight," he said, his voice carrying across the assembled thousands. "They called us equals because we knew when to stop, but I think the real reason they finally understood us is simpler than that." He looked up at the stars, at the galaxy that had finally opened its arms to humanity. "We showed them that strength is not just about winning battles. It is about choosing to help when you could walk away. It is about forgiving when you have every right to hate. It is about reaching out your hand to someone who once hurt you and saying, 'Let us build something better together.'" He smiled, and for the first time since the battle, it reached his eyes. "That is what it means to be human. That is what we showed them. And that is why, in the end, the barbarians saved them all." The memorial ended with a moment of silence. Then, from every human ship in the fleet, a single song began to play. It was an old song from Earth, one that had been sung in times of grief and hope for hundreds of years. The aliens did not understand the words, but they understood the meaning. They understood that they were hearing something sacred, something that spoke of loss and love and the unbreakable spirit of a species that had finally found its place among the stars. And for the first time in 10,000 years, The Galactic Council wept alongside the humans. Together,